I'd like to demonstrate how I use AI tools to code a realistic feature. Here, I'm looking at a tech design for what I want to build, this stop generating feature for a prompt playground. So you press the stop button, you've got a chat interface, you press the stop button, and that stop button prevents the AI from continuing to respond to you. So I've written up a tech design for this using my 20 years of experience in designing things. So I have broken things down. I'm going to use a state machine. I've got one particular API that needs to be modified. I've got a second API that needs to be modified. And I've broken it down into an implementation checklist where there's a shared function that we need to implement. And then there are two APIs that need to be either edited or updated. And then finally, I've got some front-end code that uses those APIs that needs to be updated. And we need to cover everything with end-to-end tests. Those four cards are written out here. I've got the shared function, the two back-end APIs that need updating, and the front-end logic. So this is an initial tech design. It is an initial plan. I want to use this plan when having an AI collaborator in implementing the plan. So first I want to get this Google Doc into a format that is easy for an AI tool to consume. So what I need to do there is transcribe this to Markdown, which is very well supported. So let me show you how I did that. So first I tried printing out that Google Doc as a PDF, and then I told the AI to transcribe particular parts of the PDF. Let me find the conversation for that. All right, yeah, here's the prompt for ChatGPT to transcribe the PDF. And it did do so. However, it took a lot of liberties in translating it, which I wasn't happy about. And it couldn't see the strike-throughs, which I told it to remove in my prompt up here. So later I used a different technique where I took out an image of each page and told it to transcribe from the image documents rather than the text, than the PDF document. And that worked a lot better. And I got a Markdown file out of that, which I will open up here. And so let me bring up the original document in this side by side. So this transcription is much more close to what I wanted. And I guess I didn't show the prompt for that either. Let me bring that back. So this one, the prompt for that, attach the 6 images, told it to transcribe to Markdown, and I also told it to specially look at diagrams and convert it to human readable dot or mermaid diagram format. So that's a little interesting. Did a good job. I have manually reviewed this. This transcribed PDF of the tech design will be useful as context when interacting with the coding agent. So I'd already started the interaction. What I did was, so first off, I'm using Visual Studio Code. I went into, and I'm subscribed to GitHub Copilot Pro, I think it is. And you install the extension, you press the Copilot button, brings up the sidebar. And one thing you have to click initially is you need to change it from, I think it starts with ask mode. You need to change it to agent mode so that it can actually make modifications eventually. And you also need to select which model to use. The default models that are included are not very good, in my opinion. Strongly recommend Sonnet 4 or O4 Mini when doing feature implementations that need some strategic thinking. The standard models are only good for like individual functions, I would say, at least for reliable output. So just start with one of the Claude sonnets. 3.7 or 4 is great. It will charge you a little bit more. If you're on the Pro plan like me, you get 300 so-called premium requests per month. And you can see the cost of that here. So set it to agent, select the model, and start with the prompt. In this prompt, I explicitly include a instructions file, which I've already written, which tells the AI about the overall structure of the code base that I'm operating in. So let me go find that. So this is already written. And this is useful to include when you are making requests to the AI for anything. So I can add a file to the context by typing hash and then the name of a file that's already open. In agent mode, you have to include this explicitly. If you're using one of the other modes like ask or edit, it would be included automatically. But in agent mode, you have to explicitly include this. And so that's the overall code base context. Now I give it the context for the overall feature, which is this entire Markdown file, which I have included. And now I want it to focus on a particular step. So I went down to the first card, the first of the 4 cards. I selected it and I typed #selection to get this token. And then I gave a little bit more explanation of what needed to be done. There's a particular function that needs to be written. Based on my own knowledge of the code base, I told it explicitly to put that function in a particular module, and I told it to put the tests for that function in another particular module, both new modules. And I told it to explicitly only write the implementation first, not the tests, just to make sure it's not trying to do too much at once. And I pressed go. And it has done things, which let me read what the output is. I will say Claude Sonnet is it's a bit of a chatty model. It is strategic, it is highly independent, it'll use tools, but it is also kind of chatty. O4 Mini by comparison is the strong silent type. It thinks a lot silently, and then eventually it gives an output, which is usually pretty good. But it does most of its thinking silently, whereas Claude does it out loud. Oh, and it looks like the demo gods are not entirely with me. It looks like it got its response cut off. So I'll tell it to try again. Hopefully it'll continue from the same point. It looks like it will. And it is correctly observed that we're trying to write a type of test that actually hasn't been written before in this project. A test in Django that exercises async Sanic code as a unit test. This is not something we've tried to do before, so I'm curious to see what it will come up with. I see it started writing some code. In VS Code, if you have this little square icon, that means that it's written some code, and VS Code will present the diff of everything that it has done since you last approved changes automatically. In this case, the entire file is new, so it's selected the whole file, it's actually not done with this turn. It stopped, prompting me whether it can run a test. Presumably this is the test that it just wrote. Something that you can do is that you can tell it what types of commands are safe to run. Right now there's a bug in the allow list feature that says that auto approves commands. So right now I have to approve all commands manually, at least for the Sonnet models. The OpenAI models might not have this problem. Anyway, before it runs this test, I'm actually going to read it. So let me pause for a sec. So it's created a new test file as specified, new test case. It has picked up this is a unit test setup. And this is a type of test it hasn't done before, where it's unit testing Redis from Django in an async fashion, which is interesting. So it is setting up, okay, it's doing some stuff with channels. Oh yeah, okay, it's pulling the Redis configuration out of the channels configuration. It's directly instantiating a Redis client and saving that, and it's an async Redis client. So that's interesting. Oh, and it's doing that on every test run, on setup, not setup class. That's interesting. And on teardown, it also tears down the connection each time. Using async IO to run. That makes sense. Okay, so let's take a look at this particular test that wants to run. These are utilities that it's put at the top. I'll have to rewrite that a little bit because in this code base, functions called down so that high-level code you see first before low-level code. So I'll fix that up in a moment. So this is the test that it's going to run. Let me read it. Okay, this makes sense. It constructs a request ID using a helper, makes sure that it doesn't exist, and tries to use the new function that it was asked to write to transition that state from none to running. Make sure that function returns the old state of none, and make sure that when asking Redis directly that the request ID has the new running state. And it defines this locally as an async test, and then it uses async IO to run it. So that all makes sense to me. As mentioned, I'm going to refactor some of this stuff later, but I'm not going to touch anything until see whether it works at all. So let me go ahead and let it run this test. Okay, got an assertion error to take a look at. It's probably going to look at it itself. Let's see. It looks like it hasn't. There's a very special request pattern that needs to be done, or a very special import pattern that needs to be done in Sanic contexts. Yes. So let's see if it did that correctly inside here. Request state. Yeah, this is what it's supposed to do. All right, let me debug this myself for a moment. It's working itself as well, but I can interrupt it if I see that it's going off the rails, which sometimes it does. Oh, that's funny. So it decided to not even worry about how to import the Sanic module correctly right now, and it's temporarily copied the entire function definition that it wanted to test into the test suite itself. That's a pretty weird thing to do, but I think it's fine to see whether the function actually works. So let's let it run that test. Event loop is closed. That's an async IO error, probably related to the new technique for running something in a loop. Let's see what it thinks. CJSON? Yeah, async IO event loop issues, that's fine. I don't know what it's talking about with CJSON. really I only see the async IO issue. Let's see what it tries to do. I'm curious. It's worth noting that I only did one user interaction when, actually two user interactions because I pressed try again. I only did two user interactions when generating this entire conversation, and Copilot changes, it bills you by the number of user interactions, not by either the number of actual chat API requests that are made and not by token count. So when I look at my usage of, say, premium requests, so I've only used 2 premium requests so far in this conversation, even though I've got this really, really long set of messages from the AI, which are definitely coming from multiple calls to, in this case, the Sonnet API. So I'm going to wait till it actually fixes this, and then we'll be right back. Uh-oh. While I was in the middle of fixing stuff, I've got the dreaded summarizing conversation history output. This happens when the conversation gets so long that it's about to exceed the context window of the model. When that happens, it uses heuristics to try to summarize everything that has been said in the conversation before, but it's really bad at it. So normally I try to create separate chat sessions for each individual tasks such that you never get to this point. Unfortunately, we've gotten to this point really early in this overall task, which is unfortunate. So it's probably going to be a little bit confused after it does this summary. Yeah, like it forgot that it ran the test and it forgot the results. So that's not great, but hopefully it'll see the same thing that it saw before. And we'll see how it does afterwards. For what it's worth, I don't know of any way to see in Copilot Agent how much of the context window it's used so far. So I don't know how close it is getting to the summarized conversation history moment at any given time. There is an open feature request for this, which I have upvoted, and it was filed very recently. So wouldn't be surprised if by the time you watch this video that there is a way to see how close you are to getting to exceeding the context window, because that's something you definitely want to avoid doing, because this whatever it's doing for summarizing is just not very good. So Redis key pattern. I'm going to look at what it's actually doing. Moment. Okay, so no running event loop. That's definitely a event loop issue. And then also this is why it's confused about keys. So let's see. So what's it doing? Run async test, async IO run. Run until complete. It gets to this point. Get key exists, request ID. Okay, let's see if it's getting confused because we ran it before. Let's see if its request ID is like actually random. So let me just go find that. 230, no, where is it? 258, 258. That's not quite, doesn't actually have that line of code on it. Not a regular expression. 347. And that's a different test. Oh wow, it tried to one-shot all of the tests. Ooh, that's probably not going to work. Okay. All right. So this is probably the thing that's failing. Request ID, get test request ID. And it's always using a fixed one. Yeah, that's not good. It's also saying this is a suffix when it's clearly a prefix. Yeah, this isn't good. It's definitely going to have problems when it runs the test multiple times, unless it is very careful to clean up, and I bet you it is not. Okay, it is trying to clean up. It still could fail. I worry a little bit it's going to go off the rails, so I'm going to actually save this stuff into version control. Stop gen, git commit add all with message in progress, stop generation. I just call it task 1. Well, specifically, what is that task? It is the, it's this function whose name I am forgetting, transition. So if it does go off the rails, then I can revert to that git commit manually. So, okay, it thinks that it fixed it. I'm not convinced it did, but let's try. It may have modified something pretty quickly before I was able to read the code. Yep, same failure. Why is it debugging the Lewis script? It's never even executing that. Okay, one thing I've done here is I've actually paused the agent by clicking a pause button here so that it doesn't just keep going. Let's see. Because the key isn't being created. Oh, this one is failing now. Okay, well that's good. Okay, so that makes sense why it might debug the Lewis script, because it actually ran the Lewis script. It's added some debug prints. Yeah, let's see what it actually gets. Let's let it go. Let's let it continue. So it's doing its own debugging. If I had written this code, I could have easily made similar mistakes on the first draft, and I'd be doing some sort of debugging that's similar. Let's see what it does. It's running but not setting the key. Lewis script logic issue. I'm going to pause it. And I'm going to actually look at that. So let's take a look at this Lewis script. It's doing a lot of computation. That's a big doc string. There's a Lewis script. Has to compute the script arguments. Register script, await script. Yep, that is the correct way that you run it. You have to tell it what keys are involved, and you have to give the values, and then you have the script itself, of course. Got some locals, have some loops. Why do you need a loop here? Get current state. Oh, because it has to check multiple states. Right. Ooh. Yeah, this logic is kind of tricky. I wonder how it's going to try to debug it. Yeah. Let's let it do that. Debug redis.py. Okay. And once it actually stops modifying stuff, which it just did, I'm actually going to tell it to keep all the changes. So now when it makes subsequent changes, I'll be able to see the diff better. I'm going to checkpoint this, git commit all with message, sq for squish. So debug redis.py. Oh, this is a much simpler one. Great, async IO run. Oh yeah, this is nice. Ho ho ho, wow. Oh wow. This is wrong. Does it really need the settings? Well, it's probably going to error on this. And if it does, I can help it out with that. Oh, its virtual environment isn't set up correctly. Let me intervene. I've noticed this in like the last week or so. It hasn't been activating the virtual environment correctly in VS Code for the Copilot terminals. Don't know why. I'll do it manually. Oh, that's not the only problem. This project doesn't actually run outside. So this project runs all Python commands and similar inside of a Docker container, but it doesn't know that. So I need to tell it that. That is in Copilot instructions, but probably Copilot instructions got eliminated when it summarized the conversation history. So let me get it back on track. So to run Python, you'll need to run it in the project's Docker container. Example, Docker shell, etc. Review this. For more information. Okay, let's see if this gets it back on track. Let's try this. Great, much better. Okay, so I've gotten it from going off the rails. Whew. Well, that's fun. Can it do that? All right, we'll give it a shot. Whoa. All right. It's using CJSON inside of Lua, which may or may not be available. It doesn't have CJSON. If we need to install CJSON, probably can. So what's it going to do? Oh, wow, it's using string parsing. All right. Oh, wow. That worked. All right. Okay, so it's done its own testing independently. So now it's going to go back to transition state. And it's made modifications, which I can now see. Yeah, so it's gotten rid of CJSON. I've done some, yep, string parsing. Okay. It's making multiple edits. Uh-oh, we've got another summarizing conversation history. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit dumber afterwards. We'll see what it does. I'm going to checkpoint it again, just in case it goes off the rails, which is likely. Unfortunately, I can't get rid of these diff things right now because all of the keep buttons are disabled while it's still actually operating here. Maybe another thing to request to the VS Code team. All right. All right, tester create state. It's going back to here. All right, so it updated the request state.py, but not test request state.py. All right. Created an entirely new file. That's interesting. All right. Now it's worrying about the linter, which doesn't really matter. Great, it still remembers how to run tests. Ooh, wow. Wow, okay. I'm gonna checkpoint that. See if I can get it before it adds anything. Okay. Main request state. It made another thing. Okay. Incorrect indentation. All right. It's going back to importing from Sanic. Wait, it's doing stuff at request state. Ah, here, okay. Another try again. Okay. Let's tell it to go. Keep going. Clicking the file brings up this weird diff view, which I don't like. Oh. Ooh. Yeah, I can see syntax highlighting problems that shows where their string has gone off. Yeah, it's just decided to forget it. All right. Let's have it regenerate. Zooming out a bit, this is all primarily still going off of that single initial request that I had made at the very top of this conversation. If it was auto-approving commands as it normally would, I wouldn't actually have to do anything right now. I did guide it back when it forgot about Docker shell, but even that it probably would have figured out eventually. So I guess my point is that if this was set up correctly, it could actually be doing a lot of this stuff in the background without needing my involvement. So something I've done in the past is I'll be writing tech designs for future features while implementing earlier features. So let me continue here. Can't use exclamation point in bash. Hopefully it'll figure that one out quickly. Exclamation points are not your friend in bash. Even inside of a string. VS Code got confused because it deleted the file. I don't know what it's doing. I'm going to interrupt it. Yeah, probably ended up deleting it when I got VS Code confused. Oh, where did its terminal go? Oh boy, now it's really confused. Now it's running in a terminal I can't see. I've never had that problem before. Well, oh, it came back. Interesting. All tests pass. Great. So all that passes. I'm just going to tell it to clear out all the stuff here. Aha, good. All right. And I know from experience when you RM files, VS Code doesn't like it. So I'm going to go ahead and close those before it does that. Interesting, it's declaring success. Okay. I'm actually going to now look at everything that it wrote. Here we go. So normally this isn't how I use Git, but make sure, okay, it does have some uncommitted changes. Okay, yeah, it's cleaned up stuff. Okay. Oops. Clean up. Okay. So now I can review everything that it did. So diff from this up to where we are. Make sure that's correct again. Oh no, I want from here, B14, yep. So I want this to the end. Let's see what it did. So, okay. So it created two different modules here. First off, it really needs to only generate one module. So okay, so there are two, well, let me actually try running both of them. List test exact, request state. Let's make sure it can actually see that. It can. Make sure it can see the simple variety. It can. Let me run the first set of tests. Let's make sure that they pass. They do not pass. Oh, but that's like dumb. Not a problem. Oh, that's not good. All right, so long story short, that doesn't pass, but what about this one? Oops, just this one. Okay, so I'm going to ask it to consolidate the tests that do work, or at least adapt the tests that don't work for the tests that do work. One moment. Okay, so I formulated this prompt saying that those two test files are identical. I want them consolidated. And also I ultimately want the transition state function to not be defined in the test suite itself. I want it to be defined in this module that was mentioned on the very first part of this conversation. So let me guide it back to where I want it to be. The AI started by taking the working test module and then replacing the broken one with it. I thought that was a good point to checkpoint it, so I paused it and then I took another git commit. Now I'm going to let it continue to try to move this transition state, move the transition state from here, the test module, to be in the utility module where it was supposed to be in the first place. Let's let it go. Moment of truth. It tried to move it. Let's see if it works. Ooh, it does. Very nice. Don't know what it's doing, but I like that it passed. So I'm going to say it again. I can't tell it to keep while it's in this state. Move transition state function to utility module. Still passes. All right, let's let it keep going. Still working. Hooray. All right. Great. All right. So it's declaring success. That's all fine and good. Let me make all these things go away. Keep any Git changes. Yes, there are. Tests still pass. Okay, so once again, let's look at the total stuff that it's done. So I'm going to diff from where it started, which is here. Oop. From here to head. Let's see what it did. Okay, that's the right shape. So why has it made changes here? Okay, so for the chat app, it is adding, okay, setting up a Redis client. So this code isn't actually being used yet, probably. I'll probably move this to a separate commit because I don't think it's actually used by these two files. Okay, so let me take some notes for myself. Move this changes to own commit self code review. Okay, let's take a look at the tests themselves. And this is an entirely new file, so it's easier just to look at it in VS Code. So always review the code that is being generated before you call it complete. I wasn't reviewing things a whole ton during the iteration process, but here I need to be careful. Okay, setting up Redis using Django's configuration, which is great. It's making an event loop per test. Set event loop. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. Tear down. And it closes the loop. Yep, that all makes sense. Transition from none to running. It's fabricating a request ID, and that is the correct format. It's not quite realistic, because that should be a GUID or a UUID4 hex, but that does bother me a little bit. I'm going to take down a note to make test request IDs more realistic. Old, new. So this is some sort of UUID4.hex, which is a random UUID. Okay. Yep, that looks like what it should be. Okay, I'm gonna have to like make some of these comments a little less verbose. Why is it having this prefix? All right. Investigate this prefix. This magic prefix. Move it to a named constant. Well, extract it. None to running, running to done, running to done. Starts out with running. Key. So there's another case where it's computing the key. Key. So the key name is a little bit different than the request ID name. Okay. So that's probably a key for request ID. Request ID stir to key. Something that the AIs are not great at doing right now is coming up with their own abstractions. They don't have the judgment yet, or you need to explicitly prompt them. But either way, this is something I'm still pretty good at doing at, and I can provide value here. Yep, that makes sense. Transition blocked when state is not in from list, yep. So set it to done. Try to move it from running to cancel. That shouldn't work. And indeed it does not work. Great. Okay, transition to none deletes key. This is not something that you would normally do. Okay, but it's made it so that the function can do it. That's interesting. So something I need to check that it could have missed from the requirements is that the key has a time to live, so it automatically transitions to done. So ensure implementation sets a time to live for every key. For every, we'll call request ID key that is created, so that it auto sets itself to none after the TTL expires. Test that multiple from states can be specified. I guess that's not done in any of these other tests. Yep, that looks good. Let me compare it. So this is the original test plan I told it to do. 1 to not, 2 to different. it actually did some more cases that I didn't put in. So that's cool. So it actually did more than what I planned. So that's great. So I've reviewed this test file. It works. There's a bunch of refactoring that can be done here, but I don't see any major issues with the actual implementation. Let's move on to the function on the back end that's the utility. It doesn't actually import anything that's Sanic related or Django related, which is probably just as well. Type aliases, oh that's nice. That's a nice touch. I didn't actually ask for that. Request state error. Interesting. Get Redis client from Sanic app. Yes. Is anyone actually using this though? Kind of doubt it. Yeah. To do actually use this function from somewhere. So it must be doing something else instead. Huh. It's okay, it's being passed in explicitly. All right, let's take an outline view. So this function is dead. This is probably used by tests. No, it's not. All right. Let's make sure I'm not crazy, because at least the transition state function should be used, right? Okay, not crazy. Is request state error used? No, it's not. Okay. So dead code, dead code, dead code. That type is used. That type is used. Okay. So, all right. So now we're in a process where I'm refactoring the code that the AI has generated, because working code is not enough. In order to have a maintainable system, you actually need to have it be like reasonably good code. So let's get this stuff refactored into shape. So let's say, okay, so I'm squishing, but also in progress, refactoring AI implementation, mark dead code. So let's go ahead and delete that. Delete, delete. And make sure that we haven't done anything problematic. Let's rerun those tests again. And what's the test name? This one. This whole thing, we can use a simpler command line to test that. So I should have been able to remove the dead code without affecting anything. Great. Remove dead code. Now, these tests have a lot of improvement. So all of them use this structure, run until complete. This can be done with a decorator. I could ask the AI to refactor that, but this one's actually simple enough. I'll probably just do it myself. So async test. Let's see, and that's a decorator, so I'm actually going to need to declare it up here before that. So I need, so all of these, it'll pass an async test function. Async test func, and we'll worry about type annotating this in a moment. So for all of these, it needs to stand shape this and call self run loop complete. Oh, and it does need self. That's very interesting. So this is an instance method. All right, this is going to be a little bit harder. wrapper self. So the interface it presents to the outside world is that. Return wrapper. Let's make that wrapper look like the original. Functool wraps. So now it has the self parameter and it can use it. It does use it. Great. So let me document this. Decorates. Yeah. Sounds great. All right. Let's make sure this decorator works on one test. So no parentheses will pass this in as the first argument, which is what I want. And let's see if that works. So this actually has to be now declared as async because it's wrapping this and making it a sync function. So this is kind of converting it async test to sync test. Async to sync test? Yeah, it looks reasonable. All right. So these tests already run pretty fast. So I'll just run the whole thing. Didn't work. Self. Oh. Ah, yes. Thank you. Oh, I should probably invoke it like this. No, that doesn't make any sense. Hold on. Yes. All right, let's try that. Type annotate this. Great. That worked. All right, so ideally we want to type annotate this as well. So this is a callable. It's an async callable. Async callable that goes from self to none, I believe. So let's import these things. Async callable. Awaitable? I think that's right. And oh. Callable returns an awaitable of none. I think that's right. Let's type check this file specifically. Python manage type check. Oh, actually need to return something as well. Well, let's see if this first part type checks. Only allowed into notations within class definition. Yeah, okay. I know what it's saying, but I don't really like it. Yeah, that's perfect. So, okay, this line is getting ridiculous. So I think that's right. It's having trouble with self because it doesn't know which self is being talked about. So I might just have to ignore. Yeah, I'm doing something that's a little too advanced. A little too advanced. Type ignore, miscellaneous, both of these lines. Okay, so I've proven that this works. I'm going to replace the rest, and I'm going to do that off camera because it's boring. Okay, I've added the decorator everywhere. Let's make sure that the tests actually run. Let's make sure the tests actually run and they pass. Sure do. Okay, so I can introduce that as let's see, refactor, introduce decorator, because that deduplicates a bunch of stuff. What else we got? So from the checklist, right, we'll eventually do this. We'll do that at the end after everything is squashed. Do after squashing everything to one commit. Test ID is more realistic. That magic prefix is a problem because that's duplication. And the TTL is a problem because that's actually that would actually be a functional problem in the implementation. So let's look at this magic prefix. And actually I don't need to save this. Let me just, okay. So in many cases it's getting a request ID. And then when it's interacting with Redis directly, it has to get the key name. So there's a bunch of stuff that's converting a request ID to a key name. Yeah. So I don't like that. So that logic is probably in both the tests and in the implementation. Sure is. All right, so let's fix that up. So I could just do this in a traditional way where I find all the usages, but just for grins, let's try it in a new chat session. Before I do anything, I'm going to name this one. I'm going to name this conversation so I can find it again. So this is the stop generation transition state function main task. Because I'm going to make a new task, new conversation. New conversation, it's an agent. Let's put in the Copilot instructions. Look at these files. Let's look at the test request state and the request state. Look at only those files. Don't automatically add anything. Refactor extract a new function called this. And let's just put in the implementation. So that actually is it. Like that is the function. It's kind of a utility function. Put it here. Okay. So what I'm actually going to do is refactor, replace usages. Refactor, replace computations involving the magic string to use the key for request ID function instead. I'm just going to be really explicit and point out where that is using selection. This is a really simple refactoring, so I'm actually going to use a dumber model because it's cheaper. So let's see how GPT 4.1 does. Actually, before I do anything, let me checkpoint this. So I'm about to introduce this, so close all these other. So refactor to use, okay, refactor extract this. That's what we're doing. And let's see if the AI can do this reasonably. I could probably do this myself faster just with search and replace, but I'm going to show this just as an exercise, as like a subtask of our main task of generating this transition state function. Okay, it said it finished it. So let me see what it did. I think it just got confused by this because this is not actually any changes. Yep. Prove them one by one. There are also hotkeys for this, but I'm just going to do it with the arrow keys. Or not arrow, the mouse. All right, yeah, sure. Import it at the very bottom of the file. Yeah, okay. It's pretty bad at inserting imports. So I'm just going to combine these lines. You really don't need to have this comment. It's not very interesting. Does no use of request ID? What about state name? Nobody uses that either. All right. All right, so let's make sure that refactoring actually worked. I guess it closed its terminal. All right, PMTK. Yeah, it's test request state, so give me the suite name, run the suite, make sure that it passes. Cool, and let's make sure that it probably got all the occurrences by searching for them. And it didn't. Not quite. This one is borderline, but I'm going to do it manually. The request ID pattern is this. And I'm going to use this. Stop typing for me. Okay. One, two. There is no third. What is it talking about? Oh, it's saying that I shouldn't have a third. All right, let's make sure that's okay as well. That line's getting long, I may break it. Good. So that's refactored. So refactor complete. I actually start squashing some things. Yep. So let me just squash. I can just do this manually. Git rebase interactive, head squash 2. Squash those together. And those are squashed into the thing that's up there. Factor extract key, so that's good. Okay, so what else can we refactor in the test suite? Okay, some of these comments are redundant. Same request ID. It probably should use a random one. We actually have a comment for this. Maybe we'll come up and do that next. This is plain text, not Python. I guess I didn't end it with a txt extension. So we'll get back to that. Transition, I mean, this is obvious. It's also obvious. Refactor inline is not something it can do. So I'll just do that manually. There's a bunch of setting and getting based on the request ID key. So let me put that back. Set request ID state, get request ID state. Okay, so yeah, I can centralize that very common sequence of operations down here. Utilities. Utility is usually how I write it. So this is get request state. And actually I can use the types that are declared here, state name, and a request ID. Yeah, this is actually kind of nice. Oh my God. I really should disable autocomplete. So let's start with the basic stuff. We need the key, and I need the new state, or just the state. And I need to return it. Yeah, and it's nice to have it out as a string. Okay, so I need to import both of these, which were imported before. All right. And it doesn't know how to sort by, oh, I see, it's sorting by a different mechanism. Oh my gosh. Here we go. So that's get request, oh, await. Await needs async self. This is a method. Great. All right, so that's set request state. Let's also do one for async def set request state. That is the correct signature. And that's a good implementation. Yep. Extract common TTL to named constant. All right. right, so I've got some new methods that I want to be used in all these places. Again, I can't just use the AI to do this. I think I will. So let me get that set up. Let me name this conversation before I forget. So this is subtask. Oops. Need to name the conversation. Subtask. Refactor. Use this. Let's make a new task with instructions. Look at this file. Test request state. Refactor tests in that file to use the set request state and get request state utilities wherever possible. This is really easy, so again, I can use a dumber model and cheaper model to do this. Let's just go ahead and do it. Oh, before I do anything, checkpoint, make sure so those are the new methods. Oh, and I actually did some cleanup there. Okay. So in progress, introduce these two utilities. All right, now we'll let it continue, just in case it messes stuff up. Ho ho! Nice. Now, something it's trying to do is deleting some white space. No, that's super weird. Okay. So reject is command end, accept is command Y. So reject, 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 accept. Accept that it removed that. Sure. Reject, reject. Oops. Accept, 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 reject, reject, accept, 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 reject, reject, accept, 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 reject, reject, accept. Fabulous. So let's see if those tests pass after I made those changes. Fantastic. So let me just add all, and I'll just squash it in one go. Refactor, introduce utilities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see what else. What else can we refactor? TTLs, request IDs. Let's see if there's anything else by just scanning it. I mean, this is obvious. That's obvious. This is obvious. More the refactor. Yeah, okay. I can probably start eliminating some of these. Yeah, most of these comments are not very useful anymore. Okay, so let's go through and remove comments that don't make a lot of difference. Yeah. Yep. And inline And we'll do it this way, because that's a little bit long. So old state, new state. I do kind of like the variable new state. So we'll introduce an inline explaining variable, which is a little weird. It's a little weird. I'll run with it for now. So, yep. So transition, old, new. Great. Setup, transition, running, previous state. Should return previous state. All right, same deal. Yep. It is, of course, a matter of opinion. Yeah, it's the new state, not the current state. It's a matter of opinion whether some of these comments are redundant or not. Should fail. Leaving the state unchanged. Yeah, that's more succinct. Transition from running to done. Oh, this is duplicating stuff up here. Yeah, okay. Yep. It's all kind of one block. Yeah, redundant. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah, okay. This is probably worth keeping. Here we go again. Well, yes, but that's obvious. It always returns the previous state. So that's great. So that's some more refactoring. Let's actually look at that whole thing because that was all manual. Okay. Let's make sure that still runs. Okay. Refactor, eliminate low value comments. All right, what's left? So these request IDs, it's using fixed request IDs. These are not great. So there's a couple problems. These probably should be random to avoid situations where tests collide when run repeatedly or if they don't clean up state. These don't need to be fixed. So it really just needs a random request ID. So let's make it a random request ID. So create request ID. That's fine. It's not quite what I want. I want a random request ID. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we'll just make the user constant because we don't really care, but we want this to be different. Why is it giving me a red? Oh, there's an extra one. Yep, UUID4.hex. Exactly. And we want to return this. And don't need any of this. Need to import this. We don't even need self here, so I could just make this a static method. And it doesn't need to be public. Okay, so let's do this. Pretty much every test requires a request ID. So let's go ahead and give it one. So that's misleading. Let's see, clean up Redis connections and test data. Yeah, close the event loop. It's a little redundant, but it mirrors this. All right, back to what we were actually doing, which is getting a random request ID. Self dot create random request ID. Yes, self, thank you. Also doesn't need to be public. Oops, not dash. I'm surprised it let me do that. Okay, so self.request ID. So, yeah, I'm just going to do this manually. This is not hard. So let's replace all of these. Whole word match. Oh, it doesn't have a button. Oh, yes, it does. Yep. Okay. So now I need to find all the assignments and get rid of them because they're all redundant. Gone. 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 right, so let's see if it works. Also, I should probably actually check what one of these IDs are. Okay, it passed, so let me check to make sure it's a reasonable thing. Yeah, almost. All right, let's see what this is. Yep, looks totally reasonable. All right, so that's a wrap. So refactor, introduce random request ID for every test invocation. So now we're getting to a point where there's not a lot else that can be done. That's pretty succinct. It's pretty darn obvious what's going on. Now, there is an interesting question as whether it would have been faster for me to write all this myself rather than have it generate a bunch of stuff and me to refactor it. Yeah, have to do a study to figure that out, but you definitely need to end up with refactored code because code will be maintained for a long time. So it needs to be good quality for your future readers. So let me just see. So that's refactored the test module. What about the implementation? Type aliases. This is commentary that shouldn't be there. This can be more direct. Yes, that whole thing. Now, import literal. And I think I can get it from typing. Let me make sure that it actually thinks that's okay. It might not. So, good point. This is from Redis, right? Yeah. Oh, that's weird. We'll look at that later. Yeah, so really you need a check cast here. Well, then let's do it. All right. This is why I need to finish implementing Typeform. All right, so this is, it's a result state. Yeah. Result state as opposed to result string. What the hell is all this? Okay, so clearly this is the thing that works. Wow. Okay, so that has got to be it. It's got to be bytes. Actually, I don't know, do I? Before I do anything, let's just see what it is empirically. Run tests. Pretty sure it's going to be either always bytes or always strings. My guess is it's going to be bytes. Yep, it's always bytes. All right, so let's get rid of all this dead code. So sometimes it's null. So then return none. Otherwise, it's got to be this. So let's just do an assert. That's obvious. Great. Not else if, else. So that should still work. Whoops. Do. Yep. All right. And now it does actually need to verify this. So this is a result string, but the result state try cast to state name result string. Let's import that. No, it doesn't know where it is at all. Okay, I'll just do it myself. From trycast, import trycast. Cast. So now that should work. Let's get a better error message. It's not result stir, it's result bytes. All right. Result bytes decode blah 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 is result stir. Errors replace. Try to get the string into the right format. The string is not in the right format, then error. Otherwise it is in the right format and the type checker can prove it. Let's see if the tests still pass. Let's see if the type checker passes. Not quite. Argument 4 has incompatible type. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at that. Canceling versus canceled. Let's take a look at the original spec. Looks like it's canceled. Oh no. Canceling. All right, let me go all the way back to the PDF. Hold on. Okay, so running, canceling, and done. Those are the only things that should be here. Running, canceling, and done. So what is this? Running, canceling, and done. So that's correct. So what is this? Running to canceling. Canceled is not valid. And indeed it's not. Yep. So let's see. So saved by the type checker, maybe? Yep. Hey! Bug found by the type checker. Isn't that great? What were we even doing? Oh, I was fixing state name. And that, okay. Okay. Define state name with literal type. Decode script result. result more strictly. Let's see what else we got. Atomically transition. All right, atomically transition state. Atomically transition the state of a request from one of the specified states to the new specified state. Implements a blah 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 specification, which is an implementation detail, and is explaining how it's atomic. Again, an implementation detail. Args returns. This is obvious, 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 obvious. This is useful. So this should be documented here. The state machine requests can be in one of the following states. Example usage. Start a new request. Right. Okay. That's probably reasonable to include. From states to state. It's great. Great. Does have a time to live. That's an interesting magic number. And it's different what the test is doing. Use a simple string-based approach. So that's when it was rewriting from JSON, but that doesn't really matter in the final implementation. Comma separated value, yep. Yep. It includes the TTL as a parameter. Okay, get the current state. Interprets that as a null. All right. Oh, string matching. Ooh. Yep, you can do that. Find in the full set of from states, the current state with, yep, great. Actually do this in bash scripts. Otherwise, okay, yeah, I would have done this a little bit differently, but that's fine. If it's allowed, then do update it, either del it or set. Yep. And either way, return the current state, which could be that special null value. And the tests are checking null in both directions, so I guess that works. Oh, that's what's going on. I see. Yeah, this could be made more succinct, but this is good enough. I may rewrite that. Join it. Yeah, exactly. Converted from, yeah, okay. It's just so obvious, I'll just do it. Yep. Bingo. I mean, this is obvious. Register the script and await it. It's not used anywhere else. What? Did it auto-complete something on me? You. Result bytes, state key from states to state, TTL. Ooh, it's a string. TTL seconds to number. Okay. And that is used there, and that's fine. Converts it back. Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. So that looks good now. So you did a lot of little things there. All right, let's make sure that's still good. Run the tests. Okay. Refactor miscellaneous in request state.py. So what's the deal with this TTL? It's constant. So I'm going to pull that out. So this is request state TTL. Right now it's private. Where is it getting that number from? So the spec says Sanic endpoint timeout times 2, or 10 minutes. Let's see what the actual endpoint timeout is. So we need Sanic, servers, chat, probably main. Maybe not. Okay. You can probably figure this out faster than I can. what is the Sanic request timeout for the chat Sanic server in this file? Yeah, let's use GPT-4.1. Not explicitly set. I'll probably need to actually check this, but 60 seconds? All right. That's fine. Can that really be, 60 seconds, 1 minute? All right, let's just set this to 10 minutes. So minute times 10, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Looks fine. Should probably document what a request ID looks like. In the format, user ID, UUID, hex, random, UUID hex. Identifies a request made to the chat Sanic server. And what specifically to this endpoint. Made to the endpoint of the opaque string currently in the format. All right, this is looking better. Okay. Maximum duration that a request to might take. Before it is considered, let me think about this. Before it can no longer be canceled properly. It's good enough. Looking good. It says this is unused. It is unused. Let's get rid of it. Whoops. Great, great, great. This module implements an atomic state machine. describing the state of an in progress request to the blah 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 endpoint. Yeah, that is good. Yeah, that looks good. This is looking pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Yep, that looks good too. All right, so I did some miscellaneous. This is all comments, except for that. All right, so let's just check the tests one more time. Hopefully they're still passing. Great. So this is kind of miscellaneous factoring again. All right, so let's go back. So if we go all the way back ourselves, I guess we need to check these. Okay, so we did make these more realistic. It does set it. The implementation does this. Yes. So passes that in. Reads, writes. So del set x, the only, okay, so that's the only place it does that. So I got it into a constant. Ensure tests use same TTL constant for realistic simulation. So that's not something that's currently happening. $3,600. 3,600. 60 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So let's make it actually use the correct TTL. This is test code, so I'm going to say it's okay for it to use this private constant. Let's make sure it imported it reasonably. Did. Okay. So that's good. Okay, so we'll need to squash everything soon. One more time. Refactor use consistent TTL. Okay, so that's great. Now let's clean this up. So let's re-summarize what happened. I started with, all right, guess I don't need the instructions. Let's close a few things. What is this? Doesn't matter. That's the spec. Right. So what we were doing was this card 1, implement transition state. So got the implementation. Yep. So that's all the stuff that we're doing right now. So I had the AI start generating that logic. I was squishing it along the way. Tests pass initially. Later, more tests pass, deduplicate. So that's when I was having the AI do duplicate stuff. Still passes, tests still pass. So that's where the AI stopped. And then this is where I started refactoring it. And these are many refactoring commits until I get to now. So what I need to do is I need to squash all of this stuff back to here. So let's take a look at what the diff will look like if I squash it. So as indicated earlier with our self-CR, there's some changes to the chat app which are actually totally unused by the test code and similar. So we should move that into a separate commit because that's not actually used, and so it shouldn't be included. We have this entire set of new tests which have now been thoroughly reviewed because of the refactoring, and the request state stuff which has also been thoroughly reviewed for refactoring. So that's good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and squash this. So git rebase interactive and squash all of this. And all of that works out to be the transition state function. New automated tests pass with this command line. Here we go. So that's now all one commit. So now I need to move this to its own commit. So what I need to do, I want to make sure I have that commit message. Now I need to do some git foo. Let's put these two commits into one, or these two files into one commit with the message that we had before. Unindented. No trailing spaces. Okay, and the speculative edition. Okay. So this will be the chat server. In progress. Set up Redis connection. Because this actually isn't tested by anything yet. There is, the backend endpoints are not actually using those yet because that's part of this step, update API 1 and create API 2, which I'm not going to do right now. So I've done this last checkbox. So all of this passes my own self-code review. I've implemented this transition state function. I have used AI to help me draft an initial implementation that works. And I've refactored that implementation considerably before actually checking it in Remember, working code is not enough. It needs to be maintainable code. So definitely need to take the time to do the refactoring. In order to do the refactoring, I did some of that manually, and I did some of that in an automated fashion. Let me just mark this. Subtask, refactor, use these things. And what was this? Okay, this is like Sanic's request. Timeout. So that's a question. Make sure that it was actually, oh no, I didn't do that right. Great. Yeah, so that was an implementation of a real feature with some AI assistance. That was about almost 3 hours, not quite. In real time, I've edited out some things, I'm sure. So yeah, that's it. So hopefully that was interesting. This is a bit longer than I was expecting, but it took a while to refactor stuff. And it also took a little while to get things fully generated, had to nudge the AI back on track in a few places, but hopefully this was useful.